Good morning, everybody. Here we are, live, Chad Atkinson and myself, and we are here today to discuss the Broker Carrier Summit and our recap. We had such a great time. It felt like there was so much value. There was a lot of people there that we interacted with. We wanted to highlight a lot of that, but also for those people that maybe didn't get to attend and want to attend and maybe just get the finer details of our personal experience, what we took away from it, those sorts of things. So we're just going to go day by day and kind of recap it. So first off, I got to put a call on hold. So there we go. So Chad,
Oops.
how we doing?
Oh, doing great. I came back with a couple firsts from the conference, which we'll talk about while we're on the call today. One was good and one was bad, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah. So we flew out Tuesday. Chad flew out of Medford. I flew out of Redmond, and we linked up in Portland. Kind of a tight connection. I actually had to run, so that was exciting, but made it obviously. But we actually arrived early to Dallas Fort Worth, which is super unusual. Anything from your standpoint, Chad, stand out on our flight getting there?
Well, I think the nice thing is everything worked normal. So lots of times when you fly, you know how it is. It's like things don't tend to work as well as you hope. So it was an uneventful flight and smooth, and everything worked fine. So that was good.
Awesome. So we got there Tuesday. We got there pretty early. I think we got the hotel 2:33, something like that.
Yep.
Checked in. I know some people at the conference had some challenges with the rooms not being ready. They said one wasn't going to be ready, but by the time we were done checking in, it was ready. But I know a lot of people the next day had a lot of challenges, and there were a lot of people standing around. But kudos to BCS because the rates on the rooms were phenomenal. A lot of times you go to those conferences and it feels like the room rate is double. But
Yeah.
in this instance, it was actually less because when they sent the discount code and I registered, I looked at the rate just outside of it and it was way less. So whatever you guys did with that, keep doing it because it's expensive to travel, and we don't want to pay $400 a night for a hotel room if we don't have to. So appreciate Broker Carrier Summit and Dan Lindsay, Trey, and anybody else that was a big part of that. So
Yeah, and
we got
also
there. We got
the
Yep.
location was great. You had lots of places you could walk to very easily. Really cool area to just walk around and see the area.
Yep, exactly. So we got there, checked in. I know we had a couple calls we had to do, so we did that stuff, and then I actually texted Trey like, "Hey, we're in early. Any plans for dinner?" He was gracious enough to actually invite us to the leadership team dinner across the street with everybody on the board that was there, and that just shows you how open they are and how inclusive they are to anybody that's going there. Obviously, if everybody did that, they couldn't do that. But for us, it worked really well. Got to meet some of the leadership team that we hadn't met. I'd never met Dan Lindsay. Knew who he was. Never met Robert Bain, world's strongest man or strongest man in logistics. I think is what he says. I'm not going to test that theory. I can tell you that.
I'm not going to try to go up against that. I think he's probably accurate.
Yeah, I think so too. And then I know like Don from Green Screens, which I've already known. Troy from Leonard's Express. Sat next to him. He's a hoot. I think it's always a good time with him. I've pretty much figured that out. And then Adam, and we also had at our table the photographer and the videographer for the event. So, anything you'd add to that, Chad?
Well, the food was good. Like normal, you go to Texas, you get barbecue, and they didn't disappoint with that. Uh, Good barbecue and had a nice location. It was, in a kind of a big, bigger restaurant, but the location we were in was nice and quiet, somewhat compared to sometimes, so it was easy to hear and have a good conversation. There was a bunch of talk about stuff other than just transportation, so it was good, just mixer and getting people to know each other, which I think, and typical with brokers and we just like to talk. We like to communicate and tell stories, and there were some stories told.
Yep, definitely. It was pretty calm night. We called it an early night just with travel and stuff. Um, and we knew we had to get up early for the Post and Pray golf tournament. So Chad's actually repping the hat.
Yeah.
So that was at the Arlington, or the Texas Rangers golf course there in Arlington. Chad and I were, I think we were the first ones there.
We were.
Yeah, so we were the first to eat breakfast. So I would definitely not go that early next time, but you don't know what you don't know. But nice course. One of the things that was really cool is Trey is a big guy on swag, and we got the hat, we got a brand new golf glove, a golf towel. We got a dozen really good Chrome Soft Callaway balls. Probably a koozie. I'm trying to think what else. Anything else that I missed though, Chad?
The tees and so forth. But yeah, and I think we actually got 20. We got 24 balls plus the ones they gave us to play with, I think, if I remember right. So yeah, it was a lot more than you normally get, and they're good balls. So I will absolutely be using those. Now, some people I saw those on the course here and there. So I think some people left a few on the course.
Yeah. I actually he gave me 12 and I came home with 12. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I played with them. So that's a testament of how well we played. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. So we had the shotgun start. It was literally a shotgun start with the beer shotguns. And I think 3 or 4 people did that. So that was fun. If you haven't checked it out, I put a video on our YouTube channel out there. So, and I haven't actually done this yet, but if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please make sure you're doing. We're doing a lot of great content. I'm gonna just continue to try to do new stuff and see if it works. And if it doesn't, we won't do it again. But a lot of live stuff, a lot of unscripted, because I think that's kind of what's working right now. But if you are logged on, do us a favor. Let us know where you're coming in from, and maybe some questions if we hit on something that you want us to dive into a little bit deeper. So we teed off. I'll give you the breakdown on how the tournament worked. It's called a shamble, 2-man shamble. So we put in our handicaps. I was a little bit nervous about my handicap because it's 10.2. And I really haven't been playing to that except for the very last round. Before we went out, I shot 78 here locally. Best round I've had in a couple of years. So that was exciting. If I shoot that well, then I am playing below it. And Chad, you're a 14, is that right?
Yeah, I'm a 14, and I have to, say a little bit about this because Kel and I started playing, I think it was about April, May of this year, and I hadn't played with Kel beforehand. And I think the very first time we got on the course, he says, "Oh, I used to play in school," and I'm like, "Oh boy," and I thought I was just going to get completely annihilated. And I think I actually won the first time we played, or the second. It was something like that. And I was like, okay, everybody thinks they're good. I guess Kel thinks he's good. But but as the year went on, I don't know that I've won another time when we played. I think you beat me every time. So you for sure have the better game of the two.
Yeah, thank you. Got to tell an agent I'm live on a call, and I'll call him back. It must be pretty important because unfortunately it's the second time he's called me. So hopefully that. But yeah, so I was playing really bad at some of those rounds, and kind of just started to figure it out as we went on through the year. But so anyways, 2-man shamble, what that is, we both tee off, take the best drive. Chad saved me on the first hole. I duck hooked one right into the trees off the first hole. He hit one, pretty decent. I mean, not a monster drive, but it was pretty much in the fairway. Clean second shot. And that was a great thing about it. So you each hit a drive, and then you play the best ball from there, and you play your own ball heading in. So we did that, and I would tell you that we didn't even really pay attention to the score at all. We were just playing, which was kind of free as well. Just trying to focus on getting the ball in the hole and play. And then shout out to Riker and Reed, our playing partners. That's another thing I really loved about this tournament. You couldn't cheat. Not that I'm a cheater, but there's a lot of people on golf that are cheaters.
Yep.
And they pencil whip you. You know, it's like you see them out there and they're hitting the ball all over the place, and they come in 5 shots better, and you're like, there's no way. You didn't hold out from 300 yards every time. So I really like that. So Trey, keep that going, in my opinion. And you know, sometimes when you go play a scramble, it's like you don't really feel like you're playing your own game, because you're trying to hit shots that you don't have in your bag, because you got to hit it, you know, better than the guy that's close. Or there's just a lot of different pressure on it. But you know, how did you feel about the setup?
I really like that format, like you say, because it does feel more like you're playing your own round, even though you do share that first drive. But I mean, I don't know how many times we both had drives that were virtually identical. I mean, we could have used either one. But there were times where when one of us would hit a bad one, and invariably the other would have a good shot. So
Yeah.
we got lucky on that with that aspect. But I think, you know, it's also good, like you say, because it, you know, everybody's keeping an honest score because everybody's looking, and it's just, you know, you're going to actually make sure you do it right so you don't get called out for doing something wrong. And Reed and Riker, really fun to play with. They brought a really solid game, and I was just focused on trying to like keep pace with everybody, because I felt like I was struggling the whole day, but I finally, you know, somehow or other, I did okay on most of the holes. So, but it didn't feel like I was doing okay.
Yeah, I think for the most part, we didn't have those blow up holes. That was a big thing of it, is we were able to minimize those bad holes to, you know, maybe a bogey or a double bogey here or there, and pull out pars on the right holes. So so we made the turn, and we actually didn't even add up our combined score. Do you remember what you shot on the front at all?
I don't have any idea what I shot on the front. I just know overall it was 83, I think is what it came in at,
Yeah.
which is really good for me.
Yeah. So I shot 41 on the front, and I think I had three putts. So I was pretty frustrated with my. I think my putting was either great or it was horrible. It's like I missed a lot of putts, but
You had
made
some
a few
really
too.
nice recoveries, and you had some really bad greens putting.
Yeah.
And I would say in general, I had some really bad greens putting.
Yeah.
I missed a bunch of putts I should have made.
Yeah. So we could spend probably a couple hours on golf because we had such a good time. So we'll fast forward so that we're not, we get to the rest of the conference, which is what everybody's probably interested in. So a couple high notes on hole 6. Riker, I think he said he plays to a 7. He definitely is a 7, and he hit a nice wedge. He's playing about 120 yards, and he hit, and he kind of rolled down to the right of the hole. And he's like, man, if you use that backstop, it'll roll right to the hole. So I was like, and it was kind of in between clubs for me. But one of the things that I noticed is that everything was playing really true to the yardage. You know, a lot of times you play and you go to a course and it feels like they're short. Felt like that was playing very, very true to the yardage. And it was 120 yards, which is kind of a knockdown gap wedge for me. So I hit a knockdown gap wedge right on the backstop, thanks to my caddy, Riker. And it rolled literally like right down by the hole. Yeah, just drug it in and ended up at 4 feet. Was the closest to the hole at the time, ended up being second. But the top 2 got $250 gift card to Amazon. So appreciate that. And now I just totally forgot who sponsored that hole. So maybe I'll have to look it up and drop it in the notes or something. But I know it was Guillermo, so I'll remember it. But Chad, anything on that hole you'd like to add?
Well, it's one of those putts I should have made. I mean, it was a nice, easy 4-foot putt, you know, without any real break or anything, and I just left it off to the right and missed it like I did a bunch of putts that day. So, but
Yeah.
you got the birdie, and that's what mattered. So
yeah, exactly. So kind of going towards the end of the round, I started to look at my score. I was like, man, I'm scoring really well in the back, and had the birdie, which was on. It was on the front, but it was our back. So um, ended up getting really close to the end of the round, and I'm like, man, I'm one over on the back, and a lot of times that leads to like blow up holes on the end, but actually pulled out continued pars. I ended up shooting 37 on the back, so 78 or no 38. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. That was 41, so it was 79 overall. Chad came in at 83. We got to the end, and they're like, "Oh, we can add up your score." We're like, "Well, we kind of want to know." And I started adding it up. I'm like, "Dude, Chad, every hole you had a pop on, I think you parred it, which was huge." And our combined score was a 61, so 11 under with our handicap. So once we added up, we're like, dang, that's pretty good. So
yeah, I was like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess that goes back to, in our business, a lot of people make the mistake of having these long-term goals. Like, I'm going to do this in 3 months. I'm going to do this in 6 months. I'm going to do this in a year. And they think about it as outcomes and so forth. We were just in the moment on the shot. Okay, hit a good shot, score, hit this putt, and everything was in the moment. And when you do that, you have a lot more successes. I mean, we had 83 shots that we could say, yes, that was good, or it was okay, or no, that was bad. But in the end, if we'd have been sitting there thinking about the outcome at the end, it would have been, who knows? You may have just quit halfway through thinking that, oh, I'm done. I'm not going to be able to make this. And we just kept focusing on the small, what was right in front of us.
Yep, exactly. So Riker did throw in here, pleasure playing with us boys. Same here. He hit the ball well. I think he always even when I like hit a good drive, he was always like 10 to 20 yards further than me. And I felt like you, Chad, where you hit a good drive and I was always a little bit further than you. Riker was the same thing with me. It's like, damn it, Riker, stop it. But it was fun. No, and
all
I
these
think
young kids playing golf nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you there. I know I'm not a young kid anymore. So 61, we didn't know how we ended up doing. They were going to announce it the next day. So we go back, get cleaned up, showered up. That night, I believe, was the first speed dating. So we went to that. What was your biggest takeaway? Because you actually did the speed dating. I was busy talking to people outside of the speed dating.
Yeah, you get a lot of these, and you need to bring a lot of these. I'm still in the midst of going through the cards and really catching and following it back up with people. But, being able to get in the crowd of people, I had my T-shirt on. I don't have it on. I should have worn it today, I guess, but I had my broker dude, kind of a light blue shirt on. I think I had my hat on. And I was just really casual, and the first thing everybody said was broker or carrier, and I said, well, it's pretty obvious, right? I'm a broker. So I went into that with a real casual approach, and I think people appreciate that. They appreciate not being the stuffy guy who maybe shows up in a suit and tie or whatever, and just a little more relaxed conversation. But talked to a whole bunch of carriers, and what I took away from a lot of the conversations is that while we're all doing the same thing, everybody's got a little bit of a different way of handling it, a different way of doing it. Maybe they have a little bit different equipment. Maybe they're in a little bit different area. Maybe they focus on different types of service or support. Everybody's different, and in our business, knowing those little differences and aligning those people with the right customer or right shipper really makes a big difference. And I think the more conversations we have, the more face-to-face. I love the face-to-face. It's like so much more interesting to meet somebody face-to-face. And they can give you their story, and then they always have their PowerPoints and their email presentations and so forth that they can follow up with the following week. And so that was really, really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that and I don't know that, because we never really discussed this, we've both been to enough conferences that we didn't feel like we needed to like follow each other around. We divided and conquered a lot, and that just multiplied our impact. We had some dinners together and stuff when appropriate. But for the most part, you were doing your thing, I was doing my thing, and then we'd get together and be like, oh, we need to, you need to meet this person, or I need to meet that person type thing. There's a lot of that. So I encourage people, when you go to these conferences, don't feel like you got to stay in a group. Um, you know, and one of the things that really helped me is, there's a lot of people that I knew there already, that I had reached out to or connected with via LinkedIn. And so I encourage people, when you're going to a conference, do that, because that'll make you feel more comfortable. Because, even if you're the most outgoing person and you go into a room and you don't know anybody and you don't have anything in common that you've connected with, it can't be difficult. So I encourage people, figure out how to connect and align prior to the conference.
Yeah. I would add to that on the staying in your own group scenario. I've been to conferences where you see, customer XYZ, or you see broker XYZ, and they've got their sometimes table full of people, and they're all just sitting there together, and you're like, aren't you here to like, talk to everybody? And it's like, it almost makes it difficult for you to talk to that group, because they're so, almost like standoffish, it feels like. So I would highly recommend everybody to just mingle and separate, like you say, divide and conquer. It really does, I think, just add to your what you get out of the meeting, but also what you portray. And, it's important both ways.
Yep. I did drop a comment in the comments. So I asked a question: if you attended BCS, what was your biggest takeaway? So I'd love to hear from others what their biggest takeaway is as we go through this, because it's going to be different for everybody. And I think it's important that, you find what works for you. So we did the speed dating. I know we met Art from Capital out of Sacramento. That's somebody that I think that we can potentially do business with. Dry van carrier out of Sacramento, California, has 100 power units, 200 trailers, run an I-5 corridor. We have some stuff that I think we can align with, as long as we get the rates there. That's just one example of a carrier, that would pay for that conference for us, right? Like if we do business with them and we get 2 loads a week, and it fits with them, it paid for their conference, it paid for our conference. That's what this whole conference is about, is bringing people together to improve your business. So that's what I love about it. That's probably my biggest takeaway, is just those connections with carriers. It's a little bit harder sometimes with agents to like align it, but we're working on it. I've forwarded a lot of the people that I've met to our agents, and all I can do is put in front of them, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't mean I'm not going to keep going back, because there was so much value for us. So we went to the speed dating. People that I want to kind of give a shout out to that I met, Tommy with thinkfreight.io. We've done a couple podcasts. We finally connected there. Tommy, you're much taller in person than I pictured for whatever reason. It's just funny how we have these ideas in our head of what somebody's going to be like, even though we have no idea. And I learned that he's a huge basketball fan. So him and I and a couple other guys are going to do some stuff that's fun, that we're going to do some podcast stuff on, just for basketball, with our shared love of that. Some others that I met there, I'm trying to think now. I just talked to so many people. I know I talked to Jan, and I forget your company, Jan. I'm sorry. I don't have all the millions of cards in front of me. Do you have Jan's card by chance? I know she's like a.
I don't.
Okay.
That's what I don't have.
Yeah.
But I also met a whole bunch of people. Jose from Time Critical Transport. Really interesting conversation. Sprinter vans and being able to move freight, in a time sensitive manner or expedite. I thought that was really quite interesting. Smaller type shipments, not really, full truckload shipping. Michael Bush, also doing box truck type deliveries and so forth. Brokerage has changed a lot over the years. I mean, when I first got into the business, it was truckload, 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 and we didn't do anything other than truckload. Nowadays, there's all of the bits, the time critical stuff, the smaller package stuff, even up to parcels. Sometimes people are doing. So brokers are doing a lot more than they used to do on all types of modes. But I think my takeaway, from the whole conference, going back to that question, was, it was still surprising to me how so often there'd be in a conversation and a carrier would say, "Oh, I didn't realize you guys did that as a broker," or vice versa. And there's still a lot of knowledge that we could gain by having more of these, where people learn more about what happens on both sides of the fence. And I think one of the small breakout sessions I went to was really nice, because they went through what a broker does to move freight, and then what a carrier does to move freight, and then they put those side by side. And I think that was very helpful for everybody in the room to just really understand that both sides have a full-time job, and it takes all day long to do these things, or longer in our space. But it does take work. It's not just, making a phone call and making money.
Yeah, exactly. So Brad commented in here, and I've known Brad a long time. He's now our insurance agent. I actually asked him to go to the event. It was a 6-hour drive for him. Hopefully he made some great connections. So Brad, if you're still logged on, drop in the comments what your biggest takeaway was, other than seeing us. I'm just kidding.
Thanks for dinner, Brad.
Yeah, thanks for dinner. That was great. I was literally so stuffed that night, and he's like, finish it. I'm like, I had one piece of cake left. I'm like, dude, I'm already like here. But appreciate seeing Brad. Great dude. If anybody on this call needs help with insurance, reach out to him. He's on LinkedIn, obviously. Brad Bridges. It's TT Club and Stevens Insurance out of Arkansas. But great dude, knows the industry, was a trucker. So if you're a trucker or broker, he can help you out. So, and then Riker commented that they think Dan and Trey did a great job of making everyone feel included. A lot of conferences can feel cliquish, but that wasn't the case at BCS. I think that's the biggest thing that I agree on, is it was very open, and everybody was there, and just the way they design it and the way they keep talking about it is that they hit the nail on the head. And just keep doing more of that, guys. Dan, Trey, anybody on the leadership team, that's what you nailed better than anybody I've ever seen. So keep that up. So great point, Riker. So we're only on day one. We got through that. We got through dinner. Anything else on that day one that you think was important?
No, I think we did a pretty good job covering that. We probably saved the rest of the time for the meat and potatoes of the next days.
Yeah. So we show up. We were super early. You just never know at these conferences. I think you and I were like the first two at breakfast next day.
If not the first, we were pretty close.
Yeah. So we show up breakfast 7 a.m. The only thing I added in the survey that they asked is maybe throw some fruit with breakfast. It was good. Other than that, that's the only thing that I could come up with that was a recommendation. But good breakfast. We show up, opening ceremony with Trey, with Dan, and then the buildings and scaling. I'm just looking at the agenda over here. Building and scaling success with Don from Green Screens and Andrew Silver, host of the Freight Pod. I feel like Andrew Silver and I could be like, he's very honest and very open and very
blunt.
Yeah, blunt.
I think that was the word I got from it. And I was like, I like this because it's like, it is what it is, and we all know it, and it's like, why not just say it, So
Yeah. So I appreciated his bluntness. In a lot of his statements, I totally agreed with. And so that was good. And one of the things that he showed too was, and I think you're seeing this more common in business, is some vulnerability of who he is. And one of the things from a leadership standpoint that I really took away, I'm always talking about this, is know what you're good at as a leader, especially if you're running an organization. You are not going to be good at everything. I can promise you that. And if you think you are, you're a fool. So he talked about that. He took himself out of interviews years ago because he's like, I'm just not good at them. I think he was emotional. He wants to make quick decisions, and sometimes that's not the best in the hiring process. What else would you add from his interview?
I think it was just, the whole journey, the kind of fear of failing, but also kind of like, no, I'm not going to fail. I'm just going to make this work. There's no option for this to fail. It's like, and I kind of think, everybody who's run a business or anything has that in the back of their head. It's like, yeah, I could fail at this, but it's like, I'm not going to, I'm just going to make it work.
Yeah.
And I think, that it was one thing. And I think the other side was he didn't overcomplicate it. What we do is in a lot of respects quite simple on either the trucker or the carrier side. But at the same time, we all know it's really not simple. It's a lot of little small details that have to line up correctly for everything to work. And, we all have built our processes to make sure we get those little details, handled. And sometimes you do it with one person, sometimes you do it with multiples. And he talked through some of the different ways they handle different situations. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And one of the things that is really different from his brokerage to ours is they really heavily invested in, hiring 20, I think he used 20 employees before they had the revenue to pay for it. And so there was a sense of urgency, and we're in a small town market. Maybe I'm making an excuse. I could be. That's not what we've ever done, but we did just recently do it on a smaller scale with the baby brokers, because sometimes you got to put pressure on yourself and as your organization, maybe not get over your skis with it, but it's like I talk about positive pressure all the time. So we hired those 3 people, and I think we're seeing some great things from it. So, so don't be afraid to do something a little bit different. And one of the things I really liked that he talked about was, if there's a known problem, just figure it out. Don't say it's going to take 6 months. Don't put a time restraint on it, because that's just going to handicap you and your business.
Yeah, I've always gone by the theory that there's no right way of doing something. There's just different ways of doing it. And if you sit around talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, you're not doing anything. So you're better off in our business to do something, even though it may not be perfect, and then just course correct as you get more experience.
Yep, exactly. Spoken like a true fat kid. Brad said recommended snacks in between sessions. Hey, I'm not a fat kid, but I totally agree with this one.
Well, Cal, I could tell you eat a lot more than most people I know. So just keep exercising.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you should have seen me at dinner. I'll get to that in a minute. The second night with the Triumph guys, they're like, "What are you doing over there?" I'm like, "I'm just eating, man." So, but Brad did add, biggest takeaway for me is talking with brokers and carriers about different ways everyone is doing mitigate freight theft and fraud. Yeah. Dreaded fraud and theft. And he's an insurance guy, so that's obviously a big deal for him because the losses, they're paying them essentially. So, all right. So we got through Andrew. I think at that point, we probably got a text from Trey. It says, "Hey, make sure you're here at 9:40 for the awards." And we're like, yes. That probably means we did good.
That sounds good.
Yeah. So we both got that text. And I'm going to figure out how to share my screen so I can show this great photo. It's always one of those things, you know. It's like how do you do this? There we go, on the fly. So look at that! Look at that great pair holding that trophy. We are the second annual Post and Pray champions. You know, we thought we did. Dan Lindsay actually just commented, we'll definitely have more snacks than Indy, so I'll add that in there. Appreciate you, Dan, listening in. You know, which going into this, Chad, we chatted about this. Neither one of us really expected to win a golf tournament.
No,
You know, we were just going to have
not
fun.
even close.
Yeah. And I think we already kind of talked about it, but even towards the end, we started adding up the score. I'm like, dude, we shot 61 as a team with our pops. So that was pretty awesome. Any other highlights from that you would add?
No, I think just like you said, we you know, one of the things I think we said before we showed up is like, let's just play well, you know,
Yeah.
let's because I don't think either anytime we've ever played that both of us actually played pretty well. It's always been one or the other. And this is the first time we both actually played well. And I think you made some comment early on, and I didn't really think about it, but I was playing a little bit, you know, a little bit better than I normally do. And I said, well, Kel, we usually don't play for anything. And it always helps me to actually play for something, you know, so.
Yeah, that competitive spirit. So, so we're, you know, and it's just fun too. I mean, everybody likes to win, but, you know, we weren't necessarily going there to win, but we sure are getting some mileage out of that win. I'll tell you that. So it's pretty cool. And then thanks, Brad. You didn't need to add that in. The hackers division, laugh out loud. The hackers division is just handicapped. It's to level the playing field. So I didn't see you out there, Brad. So, you know, show up next time. And then Dan, like I mentioned, will definitely have more snacks than Indy. So appreciate that, Dan. That's awesome.
The other thing I would say about the conference format is maybe a 5-minute break here or there between like different meetings would be helpful for some of us.
Yeah.
That way you're not having to jump out or miss the start of the next one.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be 15. So a lot of people do the whole 15-minute, 20-minute thing. That's too long. Just, you know, 5-10 minutes max.
Well, I think part of what they did too, at least in the main sessions, is that they would start about 5 minutes late, trying to do that. But yeah, I agree. Having like just a 5-minute, you know, kind of like when you were back in school, just a passing period.
Yeah, I always just hate walking out on somebody or coming in late. I just think it's rude. So
yeah,
it's just old school, I guess.
No, I agree. It is hard, especially like if it's a closed door and you got to open those doors and it's like type stuff. So, all right. So we get to 10 o'clock, breakout session 1. Did you have a session that you moderate or not moderated, but you attended during this time, or did you attend something?
I was the 11 o'clock I went to. I was on the panel. We were talking about how technology and how technology has helped build relationships in transportation. And you know, thank Truck Stop. I've had quite a long history with Truck Stop. I actually worked with them back in the 90s to build the first integration we had between a broker and them. So that was all quite nice. And I've worked with them off and on, you know, for quite a few years. And Truck Stop always been a good partner to work with. But we had that session, and I think it was nice. You know, all the vendors that were at the conference. My takeaway is that, you know, in a way, the fact that all these technology vendors exist makes it easier for all of us to get together in one of these conferences, because they pay for a lot of it. You know, they're sponsoring a lot of things that, you know, otherwise wouldn't have any money to do it. And these conferences, they take money to make happen.
They do.
And so I think just having those technology vendors out there gets us the ability to get together and talk and do things. I think the other thing that I think with a takeaway in that meeting was the fact that there's so much more technology to know what's happening when it happens, whether it be the visibility of the track and trace type stuff, or the the past history of a carrier or a broker as to what they're doing, what they have done. You just know a lot more things up front that before you kind of had to figure out, back in the day. And you never knew where a carrier was. You knew what they told you, but you didn't know where they were. And there's so many tools out there now that foster that, well, this is what's happening. We don't even have to talk about it. And so there's, there were scenarios where people didn't think something was happening that actually was happening. And now you don't have to worry about some of those things. So technology has really helped in those areas. And there's a lot of things technology can do, but I think the fact that we have the vendors to get us to talk, there's always somebody coming up with a solution for a problem in our space, and it requires getting people together to talk about it. And that helps us build those relationships even stronger.
Yeah, I would agree. I wanted to add a comment. So I don't know if Dan is still tuned in, but if you are, Dan, just drop a comment of maybe some insight that you took away to get more people involved that maybe we're not thinking about, because you guys are doing an amazing job. But one of the things that I always try to do, as somebody in the industry, is spread the word of people that are doing great things. And people are probably tired of me talking about Broker Carrier Summit, but that's okay, because I'm going to keep talking about it because I think there's so much value in it. So Dan, if there's something that we can share on the screen that you think is value, one of the things that I need to investigate is the membership, because I do want to bring a bigger team to the next conference in Indy. So what does that membership look like, for organizations that maybe want to bring a bigger team? Those kind of things. And then Jeff Dickinson shared, love to jump on, but can't talk much due to the flu, which took his voice a bit. Save it for later. So he's already committed, and he's glad you're feeling better, Chad, because I think you and Jeff and several others all came down sick Friday night, Saturday morning with kind of the same thing.
Yeah, that was one of my first from the conference. The other was winning a golf tournament. The second was coming back with COVID, which I didn't think I had it on Saturday. I woke up with kind of had a sore throat overnight, and I'm like, okay, I got a sore throat, no big deal. And it just kept getting worse, and it's all day Saturday. And then by Sunday, I was, feeling sick. But Monday, overnight Sunday was pretty bad. I had really bad congestion and, head and the whole thing. So I think just today is my first day of actually feeling somewhat normal since I got back. So
yeah, you sound a lot better today.
Oh yeah, I have been drinking a ton of water just to get it all go through here.
Yeah. So since we're talking about that, I'm going to talk about my $1 million fist bump, because when I was on the phone at the airport, you laughed, and instead of shaking hands, I did a fist bump, and I was like, that probably just saved me from getting the bid.
Yeah, most likely.
So kind of funny. All right, so you got through your session. For me, I didn't attend any of these, and I'll share why. I've attended so many conferences. And for me, sometimes the one-on-ones outside of it are, even if it's not going to necessarily lead to business or, working with a vendor or whatever it is. But I talked to Caroline from Turbo. We had a great conversation. She has a couple of young boys. We connected on that and just kind of the stuff that she's doing with Turbo. I think it's really cool to be able to have those conversations, even if you're not necessarily going to do business with somebody. And I'm not saying we're not going to do business with Turbo, but we just went to a new TMS a couple of years ago, and anybody that's done that process is not easy. But we had a great conversation, And, you can do that and support people in the industry, even if you're not going to support them with business. So I appreciate, meeting with her. Brad actually introduced me to somebody from RTS and, the factoring company. And she actually pulled up on her phone how many loads that they have of ours that carriers have factored with them. And it was like eye opening. I think it was 1,000 loads over the last 3 months that our carriers have factored through them. So obviously they know who we are, and that you just never know in this industry how you're connected to somebody, even if you don't think you're doing business directly with them. You're supporting their business in some way, and without those conversations, you're just never going to know that. So for me, during those sessions, a lot of times I kind of just hang out and find somebody to have a one-on-one conversation a little bit more in depth. So, so let's see. Dan put in here, I haven't even read this yet. So we are really excited about rolling out membership for a number of reasons. More opportunities for education and connection, building our carrier and broker advisory councils, rolling out our preferred vendor marketplace of companies that are connected with BCS and add value to our broker and carrier members. That's great stuff. One of the things that I love too, since you brought this up, Dan, is I didn't feel like, I've been to conferences without naming names, and I felt like it was a sales pitch for whoever was doing the learning labs, like you went to, Chad, but that you participated in. But it wasn't that at all. It was truly informational. It was truly educational. Of like, here's how it's doing us. And I think you actually mentioned to me that they said, do not sell products. Do not do a pitch during that. And so I really appreciate that, because there's nothing worse in my mind, than when you're going to go to a conference and you're going to, this breakout session looks great because of the title. And then you go to it and it's just a 45-minute sales pitch on whatever their product is. And I'm like, I didn't come all the way to do this. So maybe you can add a little bit of color to that.
Yeah, I think, as being on a panel, it was very, clear to everybody on the panel. Don't name names of companies, don't project that, hey, this one's good, this one's bad. Just talk about the technologies without talking about the vendors. And I think that really helps everybody have an objective, understanding of what the technologies do. And then it's up to everybody to go out and pick whichever vendor they want to work with. Like I said, there's no right or wrong way to do anything in our business. It's all just different. And I think that's the beauty of our space, is everybody is a little bit different. And all these vendors, they give you options to do things a little bit different than anybody else. And everybody's trying to build that perfect mousetrap, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So good stuff. So that's kind of middle day one. Long lunch. I felt like that long lunch was very valuable too. I spoke to a couple carriers that I felt that would be a good fit for some of our agents that we passed on. Hopefully I say it correctly, but Sojourner out of Mississippi. I think he said they're about 50 trucks. Do a lot of heavy haul, over dimensional stuff. And then, no, the other carrier was the next day. So, but I know, talking with him, I mean, we actually looked at like where his yard was on Google Maps. I mean, just having that time to kind of connect with them is huge. Talked to a couple of others, but necessarily didn't mean they weren't great carriers. We just didn't have a connection because of the freight that we haul and the freight they haul.
Yeah. And I can confirm to everybody, we've actually passed on a lot of that information to our agent network so that they have, information about the carriers we've talked to and what types of services they offer. So it was well worth your time to give us a little bit of your time.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I'm sharing those, and I just share with our team and say, listen, somebody I met, I was able to either shake their hand, have a conversation. Here's what they do. Here's the people to talk to in that organization that can make things happen. Happy hunting, those sorts of things. And I think that's really the spirit of this conference. So lunch was good. I liked the fact that they had it long. You weren't rushed. You can kind of move about. After lunch, we had FMCSA update, or we had some women's in logistics with Dawn and Melanie and Christy and Nicole. They talked a lot about this, but I remember the first conference I went to was probably 2004, and the only women that were in attendance were usually the owners' wives. That was usually what it was, and it was just crazy to me. You're like, where's the diversity of gender? Um, but now you're really seeing that. But there's still a lot of work to do, and that was their point. It's like, let's not be satisfied with where we're at. Um, and one of the things that I try to do as leaders, I try to hire people not like me, because I don't want yes men. I don't want yes women. I want people that are going to challenge my ideas. They're going to bring experiences that they don't have. I mean, I'll use Chad as an example. A lot of people, Chad has more experience than me in this industry. A lot of people would not hire Chad if they felt like maybe they were insecure in their role, or that maybe he's going to challenge my ideas and I'm not comfortable with that. No, I welcome that.
Oh, I challenge things.
I know. That's why I brought it up. So
Anybody who knows me knows that.
yeah. So I think that's a great point with the women in logistics, is that, there's still a lot of work to do. And whether that's from a gender perspective, um, an age, is also important. Ageism is a real thing. It's whether you're old or young. I remember coming in this industry, working for a trucking company at age 25, pretty much everybody was older than me. And it was like trying to get I know I was green and I knew it then, but just trying to get some level of respect was very, very difficult, because I was young. And so I always try to remember how that feels, whether they're young or maybe they're old and they're not up to date on the technology. I know that's total, like, putting somebody in the box, but sometimes that just happens, right? We get away from technology because we didn't grow up with it. We're not comfortable. Same thing could be said for me. I'm not in it every day. But I try to be, put myself in those people's situation. So women's logistics, more work to be done, but a lot of work that has been done. Anything that you would add on that, Chad?
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agree. I mean, in my career, I have worked with so many strong women that have really made our company so much more successful. I would say some of the strongest people we have in our organizations are women. They have that ability to really understand people,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time be tough when you need to be tough. And you know, sometimes I think guys like us don't necessarily think about all the same things that we should, and it
Mm-hmm.
really helps. And I think just having that diversity of thought, the way people think, is really important in your organization, uh, and not just at the entry level positions, all the way to the top. I mean, it makes a big difference to get that vision, that different perspective on things.
Yep, totally agree. Next was the FMCS update with Ken Riddle. I think there's some important things happening there. To me, they just don't have them fast enough, but that's any kind of government entity, it takes time and
Yeah, it
way
was
more
just
time.
frustrating to me. We're going to make some changes. Yes, it's going to help things. Okay, why didn't we do that last year, the year before?
Right.
Why does it
Mm-hmm.
take this long? If it were us in our own private businesses, we would have had something in place already, I'm sure. But
Yep.
that and the lack of enforcement, or the having to hand things off to get enforced, we all know there's a finite number of bad actors out there, but those bad actors just go away, come back, go away, come back, go away, come back, and there's nothing that ever happens to them. So
Yeah,
at some
you're
point,
you're
we got to enforce that.
yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, we've seen it, in all different sides of our business, whether it's a stolen load. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of those. And I'll make a note on that. The only time that we've had that happen is when we've had employees, um, or agents skip a step. We know
Yep.
what the process is. We have it there for a reason, and they're in a rush to cover a load. It's a new customer, whatever it is. None of it matters, because, in my opinion, because if it leads to a stolen load, you just lost that customer or the opportunity to service them. Luckily, we've only had 2 incidents in the last 5 years or whatever, but it's too many in my opinion. And Jeff makes a great point. Congressional approval is the delay. Totally agree. It's such a reactive process in government. And it's too damn slow for our business. And it really puts us, people that follow the rules at a disadvantage, because there are no rules when you're a crook or a thief or a scumbag. You just do what it takes to lie, cheat, and steal, and that's what you're going to do. I think the rest of the day,
let me talk about one that I felt pretty strongly about: truckers
Sure.
against trafficking.
Oh yeah, I think
if you
was
were
the
in
next
that
video.
session, you just can't emphasize enough how important it is for everybody. I've sent the link to all my family. Many of them were just like, "Oh, wow, that's cool. I didn't realize there was something like that." And there was like, "I didn't realize I should look out for this, or that." And I think knowledge is power, and knowledge in a lot of places is a lot of power. So everybody should participate in that, and at least go through the section where you learn what to look for and what to do when you find it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I actually have a story that I can share from my asset days. I remember, this is probably 15 years ago, and I'm just work like any other day, and somebody calls, and it was some kind of CHP or sheriff's department. I don't remember exactly what it was, but some kind of police force, and they started talking to me about a driver that we just had at a particular truck stop. And as he asked me if that was our driver, and I mean, it was our company truck. And I said, yeah. And he's like, well, I need you to stop him. I'm like, okay, sure. What's going on? And he had picked up a runaway. Now, they were not underage, and he was not trafficking them, but she was a runaway. And so it's kind of the same thing that, these runaways go, and you just never know if he would have been the wrong person, what would have happened and how that story would have ended. And it just gives me chills to think of that that's somebody's daughter. And so basically, long story short, I was like, okay, I got on the phone with the driver right away. Luckily, it was somebody that I knew. He picked up right away. And I explained to him the situation. I said, the person you have with you is not, they were underage too, so it was even worse. She was telling him, I think that she was 19. But I think she was 16. I was like, you need to turn around right now and go back to the truck stop and connect with the local authorities that are there, because she is a runaway and you do not want any part of that. And so just situations like that could go bad in a hurry. Luckily obviously I don't know what happened to her after, but driver turned around, went back to the truck stop, met with authorities. He was not in trouble. He was actually scared shitless when I called him, because he had, no idea. He didn't ask for ID, which, you're not necessarily going to. But some
of the people in that line of business, I hate calling it that, but that's what they do, are also the fraud in our industry. They kind of run in the same circles. So could be taking them off the road helps us on our side too.
And since we're talking about that, Jeff added that Heather Fry is a friend, and that's why he suggested to Dan to have her come to BCS. He had her on the podcast. It was one of the best conversations that we had. This needs to be put out there more than it currently is. I totally agree.
Highly recommend everybody on your LinkedIn, your social media, whatever, just put it out there. Do your part to spread the news and spread the information about it, because it's a really good idea and it works.
Right.
A lot of ideas don't work. This one works.
Yeah. And I forget exactly, the whole conversation, but, I have just a story of recently, my wife was taking our youngest to college just to look at, and she was actually here in Medford, kind of on the south end of town. And she had the dog, and she's always like super aware because she's a ICU nurse. She always tells me, I know what's in those people's pockets, and, that are, maybe not the upstanding citizens. So long story short, she's walking the dog, sunrise, basically 6:30 in the morning just last week. And the cops are kind of moving around and getting everybody up and going out of the businesses. And one of these guys decided to follow her. And she could kind of sense that. And she turned around and she carries that pepper spray and showed him the pepper spray and like held it up, and he was probably 20 feet, but he turned around, and I have no idea what he was going to do, if he was even following her. But just that situational awareness too is so important, whether we're the person maybe following a female and putting them in that uncomfortable situation. I see that a lot on trail runs, where if I'm out, because sometimes on a trail run, I'm out 15 miles from wherever. And if you run into a female and they're by themselves, they are very guarded. And so I try to somehow, announce that I'm coming, especially if I'm coming behind them. Hey, runner, come in, and just try to put them at ease. And so it's important that we do that. And Jeff added that, Heather's going to be back in Indy, so I think that'll be great. Like Chad said, just share that information, because it is a really, really important thing. So we kind of skipped ahead to that because Heather was on Friday morning, but I'm talking a lot because Chad's having a coughing fit.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm having a tough time here.
I'm glad you are putting yourself on mute. So, so Thursday night, back up. You went to dinner with Truck Stop guys, with a smaller group of brokers. Anything there that you think that was kind of meaningful for you guys?
Well, I think we talked a little bit about, general business, but it was really, kind of the difference between truckers and brokers. Talked a little bit about sports, just a good, fun conversation, a nice, quiet restaurant, which was nice. But I think, truckers and brokers are different. When they show up in a room, you can probably pick out the trucker and you can pick out the trucker or the broker. And my analogy was kind of like, well, the broker is going to show up in a Lamborghini that he rented for whatever, who knows how much money, and look like, $1 million and so forth. And a lot of times the trucker will show up in a t-shirt and a ball cap. And I think some of that's kind of like morphing now. It's not as pronounced as it has been in the past. But I think what's interesting, if you look at the actual compensation of your average broker and your average trucker, there's a lot of similarities in what they make. So it takes both sides to make our business work and keep the customers happy. And there's a lot of fighting back and forth about who makes the most and who's getting over on the other one. But it's, in the end, we're both roughly about the same on average as to what we're making for that.
Yeah, I started this business as a shipper, 13 years as an asset-based carrier, and now 5 years as a broker. And I can tell you that neither carriers or brokers are necessarily getting rich. There's a lot of cash that rolls through companies because of the amount of volume, but it's the margin at the bottom line is pretty thin. And so I think having an understanding of everybody's fight to streamline cost, maintain margins is critical, especially because I think there's going to be more fallout this year still. I still see it. I see some things that are a little bit better in business, but I think there's still some challenges to go through before we get to the other end of it. Everybody wants it to be better, but we can only wish upon a star so long until, it's like, what's reality? So I went to dinner that night with some guys from Triumph Pay, and then a handful of other brokers. We went down to Fort Worth, Lonesome Dove, amazing place, huge meal, way too big, but I still ate it all. As you mentioned, I can eat. Those are the guys that are like, dude, you're knocking it back. If Brad's still on here, he probably still has heartburn from his chili and his pork chop that we called it a dinosaur that he ate. But great dinner, great conversation. And just again, being able to learn about people's businesses, whether it's Triumphs or the other brokers at the table, and not looking as every broker as a competitor. Maybe you compete with them in some areas, but odds are we have zero business that overlaps, and so we can be an adversary for each other. So Brad says it was a lot. Yeah. So fast forward Friday morning, we woke up, actually got an earlier flight because Chad was going to be home at midnight, and by catching a couple hour flight earlier, he was able to get home at 6 p.m.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe somebody didn't get sick because I got home early.
Right. But we attended the morning session. Thanks to Trey for throwing out broker dude stuff to the group. Again, if you don't know, you're living under a rock, but we're sponsoring 10% of the proceeds of that for carriers to attend Broker Carrier Summit. We have enough sales so far for 2 people to attend. I would personally love to get to 10 and be able to sponsor that. I think it's about $500 a carrier. And the reason I'm sponsoring carriers is because if they're a smaller carrier, it's a bigger impact for them to take their truck off the road.
Yeah.
So they're increasing their expenses and they're decreasing their revenues by attending, and they're investing in our industry, and they see value. So again, freight broker dude, I think I'm just trying to find where I can put on the screen. If you don't know, you got broker dude, you got broker babe, trucker dude, trucker babe. Again, 10% of proceeds are going to sponsor carriers to attend the next event in Indy.
And you get this.
Yeah. So, and it's all really high quality stuff. You can't, Chad's got the Under Armour on. Mine is a trucker dude. It's Adidas. So it's all top of the line stuff. It's really good stuff. And if you want a discount code, there's a discount code, $50 off an order of $100 or more. So yeah, Friday morning, we get out of there. We listen to the intro. Trey threw out a bunch of swag. Again, thank you. We watched, or were able to hear the carrier group with Alex and Michael, Evan, Sheely, and Adam I can't speak. Adam Wingfield. Good group. One of the things I love that Michael Lombard's doing is trying to promote health and wellness within the driver community. And I was thinking about this too. Is like it's the same with office folks. Well, it's not the same because we have the ability to go home, and I'm not naive to that. I've always shared that with anybody that I've worked with. But we've hired these baby brokers recently, and one of the things that Joey said that was really hard was sitting all day at a desk. And it's like sitting. Drivers are worse because they could be in a truck 14 hours a day, or maybe longer. I mean, realistically, because they're sleeping in it and whatnot. So that could be it's just hard to get out and move. So you need to be intentional about it. So I really appreciate what Michael's doing within the industry with drivers. That was one thing I always really try to do with our drivers is, hey, when you have a break, don't just sit in the truck, go for a walk. That's where it starts. Early in my career, I had some health issues because of the stress that got to me from this industry, and I don't wish that upon anybody. So, one of the things I always share is you cannot pour from an empty cup. So you have to take care of yourself in order to take care of the people that work with you or work for you, or the people you work for, or your family, most importantly. So prioritize your health. It's the only thing we have, because if we're not healthy, we can't show up for anybody, ourselves.
Health is something you have until you don't.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I've been with a lot of people through my life to see them when they don't, and there's things we can all do to help delay those things happening to us. So it's really important.
Yep, exactly. So we ended up getting out of there a little bit early, but sometimes with travel, that last day is kind of sparsely attended. That's usually why they ended early. Overall, I think I gave these guys a 10 out of 10 on everything. Again, we're already committed to coming back. If you're watched this far, you probably already know that there's a discount code through November 2nd for Texas. I think it's $75 off. So we're going to make sure we get registered before the end of the week. But I need to look at that membership package too to see if it makes more sense for us to do that. and get more
The other
people.
thing I was going to say, Cale, is there were at my dinner, we talked a little bit about the fact that a lot of the brokers that are there are management, you know, and one of the people was not management, and I think more of the people that are the actual in the seat broker doing the day-to-day operational stuff being at these conferences would be better to really connect with some of the carriers and talk to them direct. I think that would really be a good thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's what I want to look at, is getting some of our younger people or our less experienced people there as well. Because that's going to be like, they're going to be able to hear it straight from a carrier's mouth, and they're going to hear it from other brokers, and they're going to talk to tech vendors that they don't even know that tech exists, or how it works. So, so great point. Brad shared with me when I couldn't find it, freihtbrokerdude.com. So appreciate that, Brad. That's really all I got, other than just, hey, sign up for Indy. You will not be disappointed. I promise you that. We're going to be back. We're going to, hopefully we can defend our title. We'll go in it thinking that.
Oh boy.
I know, right? We're going to try. But most importantly, we're just going to have fun and make connections and just appreciate everybody. So I don't know if you got any final words of wisdom, Chad?
I would just say thank you, everybody, for putting on everything you did. It was really done well, and it's not easy to do these things. A lot of people, a lot of connections, a lot of talk about logistics of making it happen. So really well done, and just keep up the good work.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's it for us. Thanks for tuning in, guys and gals, and everybody in the industry. And we look forward. Give us feedback if you have any suggestions on how we could have done a better job today. See ya.
All right. See you, everybody. Have a good week.